Welcome to the Home Coach Podcast, a weekly deep dive into all things real estate. Now, here's your host, Steve Henyon.
Well, guys, it's the week of 8/27/2021. We've got two items that we're going to talk to you about today for you to consider. The first one is great news from last night. The Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision has put a kibosh on the moratorium on rent payments. So small business owners out there who are leasing properties to folks will now be able to collect their rent and move forward as normal as pre-COVID on that. Now, this also doesn't shut down aid going to tenants that are out there. There's still $50 billion worth of funds that are being distributed amongst the 50 states and the District of Columbia on that. So that's good news on that. And that goes for an 18-month period. So that's from 18 months from previous to forward that rent payment will be able to cover. There's also, keep in mind, there's 7 states, and including the District of Columbia, that have their own type of moratorium. So if you're in one of these 7 areas, which is Washington, California, New Mexico, Minnesota, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, or DC, check with your own state to kind of see what particular moratoriums they still have in place. Okay, so that's all good news. That's moving forward on it. Last week, we were talking about inflation. What were we talking about? That is simply that for you to be prepared with expenses going up, right? So we have everything from the gas prices and lumber and all those are going up. And we were talking about that in regards to the housing and pricing and all. But I want to get into today in your business and some of the things for you to think about when we're talking about running your business. All right, how does inflation matter? Well, expect for costs to go up, whether it's your broker's fees or your gas that you're putting in your car or your website that you might host on your own, anything to do with your business. If inflation is going up, when we say inflation is going up, it's going up across the board. Now, whether some of these companies pass it on to you right now, or they hold on to it to see how things play out and pass on to in the future if it continues, those are some of the things that we need to start to navigate and play around with and to be aware of. But if inflation continues, that just means prices are going to go up. So what do you do? Because if prices go up, in order for you to maintain the standard of living, you're going to need to have income go up as well. Now, is that happening? Okay, so let's talk about the market. Keep that in mind. We're talking about that with your business. Let's just talk about the market for a second. How's the market going? All right, we already know this. Everyone knows that market they say is going gangbusters. However, I always temper that, which I'm sure you do too. I temper that when I get these, I get stopped in the grocery store or I'm at a social gathering and so it's like, hey, Steve, how's the real estate business? You must be killing it. That type of stuff. Well, I have to put them in perspective because in their views, right? In their views, they're thinking everything is going crazy. My neighbor sold his house for $12 million more than he put it on the market for. Sellers are winning in today's market. No doubt, sellers are winning in today's market. What about everybody else? Well, you have the seller, you got one seller that puts it on there, and you got X amount of buyers that are on the market as well. And what happens is only one is going to get that. And usually what it takes is you're going to have to go above the list price on that. You're going to have to put a substantial amount of due diligence or escrow dollars down on that in order to win, right? In order to be that one that wins out. Okay, so you got a seller, you got a buyer. What happens to those other? If you got 10 offers that are in, you got 9 that are going to go swimming with the other fish, looking for another house to get on. Okay. While that one buyer's agent and that listing agent made a sale in previous years, out of the remaining 9, 7 or 8 would have found a house right away. I haven't had a sale in the last year that has had less than 4 offers on it, every one of them, which means I'm working 4 times on a minimum harder than I was before, trying to find 4 times more in the gas, 4 times more time, right? Because we're paid by our time, right? We're paid by our time on that. We don't have a widget we sell. So I'm spending a lot more time for the same sale. Okay, well, you maybe you want to accept the fact that, okay, well, my dollars per hour are going down. Okay, that's fine. I'm willing to put in more hours now in order to make the same amount of money. Fair enough. Let's take that and then add in, well, we've already talked about the expenses that are going to go up for things like E&O. Well, if our expenses are going to go up, if we want to maintain the same level of living standards that we have, then we're going to have to make sure our income goes up at the same time. The challenge right now is, in order to maintain that income, we're saying we've got to work more hours. Well, there's only a certain amount of hours in the day that we can work. So at some point, the hours are going to stop. While the expenses are going up, we're going to have to find a way to either A, bring down those expenses, or B, find another way to increase our income so that we're parallel or greater, right? Have a better year on it. Today, I want to address just one factor on your expenses and on your business. That is in regards to your broker, the firm that you work for. Yesterday, I received a couple of phone calls. There was a local firm in our area that gave a 1-week notice that they're going out of business. They have a couple of different locations in the area on it. They're a good, moderately sized firm giving 1-week notice. Now you have to ask yourself, wait a second, if everyone thinks the market's going great, why are they going out of business? We kind of touched on that, but really what's happening is they are not getting their agent income, right? They survive off their agent income. They're not getting the income in. They got too many people swimming looking for houses, not closing on deals to pay the bills. Now, this is something I think we all need to pay attention to, and it's a concern. Obviously, I run a firm as well as a real estate company, real estate school. And so I'm always trying to balance my dollars. We're trying to make sure that our expenses are low while we're providing the same amount of services. I don't want to pass on costs, but I do know costs are going up. Costs for us are going up, but we have not yet passed those costs on to our brokers. At some point, if it continues up, we're going to have to pass it on to our brokers in order not to go under like this particular company happened to. The question you working for a firm is got to understand is, remember, you're going to have to be with a firm, or you have your own firm, but you're going to have to understand, if you rely on another company and the services they're providing, it's important to know whether they're stable and whether they actually have stable principles with it. What I mean by principles is the way that they're running their company seem to make sense on it. So back to yesterday. So yesterday, I ended up getting our office started fielding phone calls from agents who were wanted to interview with us about coming on board because they only have a week to decide, right? So they're in panic mode. Not a great situation for a bunch of brokers to be in, and you never want to be in that situation. You always want to be the one with the upper hand on it, but they're panicking. We got a holiday weekend coming up, right? So a lot of stuff for them to consider. I understand it. I was able to get on the phone with a couple of people yesterday. More phone calls to return today, but I got in a conversation with one of the agents, the very first one actually that I took the phone call with, and part of it made me think about what are agents thinking about when it comes to their business. You've heard from me in classes in the past that too many times brokers don't treat their business as a business. Now, what do I mean that if this is the first time of hearing that? What I mean by that is they're like, oh, I want to go out and, I love showing homes, or I love designing, and I love to go into the HGTV kind of mentality. They don't take into consideration, well, I'm not very good with finances, or I don't know the back office stuff, or they don't maintain it. It's not their forte, but they don't want to spend money to hire an accountant or a bookkeeper or something like that to maintain it. And then what happens is, and we know there's such a high failure rate among brokers, which is why we have this constant turnover, right? We see a lot of people getting into the business, but we don't see the numbers, substantially rising. Okay. So let's go back to this young lady. So she's asking all great questions, and she's actually taken a lot of our courses here too. So she's familiar with my personality. She's familiar with how I'm going to manage it. So we kind of get through all that quite quickly. And then it comes down to the fees and agent splits and stuff. And Home Coach is, we offer various options that are out there on it. But what she was interested in doing is we were looking at her monthly costs. We don't have high monthly costs, but it was higher than what she was currently paying. And so it was an interesting little quick second pass, because she's like, oh, that's higher than what I'm paying. And my response was, yes, but we're still in business. This is where I'm going with it, is that when you're out looking at firms and your own firm that you're in, you have to take a look at that business model and say, does this really make sense? I was in a Costco one time about a year ago, maybe even less. And there was an agent that I had taught, and we were catching up, and she was talking about the firm that she went to. It was a larger firm. And she was talking about how she was having such a great experience with it because she didn't have to pay anything, got all these free stuff on it, but that she didn't have to pay anything. And she's a person who only sells like 1 or 2 transactions a year. So the costs were so low. Now, I think that's great for her. That's great. But I asked, well, how does the company pay for all the staff? She was telling me about the different offices they have and all, but no one's paying any money. And so if no one's paying money, how does the firm keep their doors open? And I asked her that. And she actually had a pretty good response. She said, I don't care. If they go out of business, I'll move on to the next person, the next firm. Well, that might be fine if you do 1 or 2 transactions and you don't have to rebrand yourself or relearn new systems into another company, or just the stress of moving to another company. If you're someone who does 5, 6 or more, 20, 30, 50 100 transactions, you need to feel confident enough that firm is able to outlive these ups and downs, just like we want you to outlive these ups and downs that we get through the market. So moving forward, keeping your eye on the ball, looking at the different factors that are out there, not only in your local economy, but in the national economy, what's happening across the world, is we want to keep an eye on the inflation, the economy and all, and then how is that going to impact your business? I suggest that you plan on expenses going up. I think that's just going to be inevitable. I think broker costs are the services that the brokers are purchasing and providing to you are going to go up. The brokers are going to have broker owners are going to have to pass that on to you. And you need to have this plan in place, because when those costs get passed down to you, are you going to absorb those costs and take less money at the end of the day? Or are you then going to pass those costs on to your client? Now, this gets to a much bigger thing that we'll have a podcast on coming up, is that how are we going to make money moving forward? right now, we already know that listing agents are dropping the amount of commissions that they're offering to buyer's agents out there. Well, on average, you're seeing them across the board. These different ones are popping up less and less and less and less because they're saying, wait a second, I got a bunch of buyers. I don't need to pay as much out to you. Now, I don't know how that's all working on their side. Like, I don't have the data that says, well, is the listing agent taking less money, or are they charging the same and making more, right? Okay. And we don't have that data. That'll all start to roll out, I guess, as we start moving forward in this particular year. We end this year, we'll probably be able to get that. Are you going to charge upfront fees? Are you going to charge guaranteed amounts of dollars? Are you going to charge? Because if you're going out there and you're showing 7, 10, 15, writing offers on 15 homes on that, those are dollars that it's time, right? It's the time that you're charging for it. I think these are just questions we're going to have to answer shortly. You cannot be the agent that says, I'm willing to do anything just to get the deal. If you don't pay attention to your expenses versus that income on it, you're going to be like everybody else that ends up dropping out in the first year, or you're going to be like this company that one day just gets probably hit by the side. They either knew this was coming. Eventually, if something didn't, they were hoping and praying that this wasn't going to happen, but they saw it coming. Or one day, because they don't pay attention to their expenses, they get hit upside the head and they can't recover. That's usually the two options that are out there. Same thing goes for you. Plan on expenses going up. Plan on how you're going to try to maintain or increase your income. Two things you're going to have to do today, whether you want to think about it or not. It's something that's going to have to take place. Here's a little secret. You can do this. You can not only survive, but do an extraordinary amount of business out there if, like everything else, you work harder and smarter than everybody else out there. Pay attention to the expenses. Figure out how you're going to get more equal or more income on it. And come up with, the third one is creative ways to do both. That's it for our podcast this week, guys. Take care. We'll talk to you later.